Hello guys, welcome back to LR Anime. Guys, please like the video and subscribe to my channel. Today is Explanation of Battle Through the Heavens episode number 122 based on novel. So let's start. The location of Pill Gathering was in the northern part of the inner region. It had already been filled by a terrifying crowd of people for a few days. Hence, by the time Xiao Yang's group had arrived, they only saw a densely packed, endless sea of human heads. An earth-shaking noise charged to the sky, after which, it transformed into a terrifying sonic wave that spread apart. One was able to clearly hear it within a 50-kilometer radius. Xiao Yang's group flashed and appeared on top of some buildings. Their eyes looked around them. Only then did they discover that this place was an enormous 10,000-foot large square. The air above this open ground had many stone platforms suspended in it. The stone platforms had a faint light spreading out from them. From the looks of it, the platforms appeared quite mysterious. Those stone platforms are the final seats of the competitors. Yizhong pointed at the stone platforms floating in the air as he laughed. They were the focus of tens of thousands of eyes. The final seats. Xiao Yang lifted his eyebrows when he heard this. The Pill Gathering is an extremely grand event. It is impossible for everyone to participate in this gathering to possess the qualification to step onto those platforms. Before entering the competition ground, there are, strictly speaking, 2 selection hurdles. Yizhong smiled. After which, he pointed out an enormous square. He asked, "Do you see that deep grey-colored space there?" Xiao Yang's eyes followed the direction Yizhong was pointing and did indeed see a patch of deep grey space. When he looked carefully, he finally discovered that this space had been forcefully distorted and formed by someone. The interior of the distorted space was filled with a kind of deep grey vapor that could block one's sight. The basic requirement for one to participate in the Pill Gathering is for one to reach the Tier 5 Alchemist level. That deep grey-colored space is the first hurdle. It is also known as the Fantasy Realm Hurdle. That deep grey vapor is something created from the body of the magical beast known as the Fantasy Soul Beast. Not only is it able to block one's sight, but it is even able to hinder spiritual perception. Additionally, that space itself has another mystery within it. That space is filled with similar things, causing it to appear just like a maze. One will lose one's sense of direction after entering it and end up lost within. Those who fail to walk out of it within the allocated time will lose the right to participate in the competition. Yizhong smiled as he explained the first hurdle. Xiao Yang slowly nodded. A strange expression flashed across his eyes. This Pill Gathering selection methods were extraordinary. Once one passes through this environmental hurdle, one possesses the qualification to enter the Pill Realm. Yizhong's expression had clearly become a lot more serious when he mentioned the Pill Realm. Pill Realm? I mentioned to you some days ago that all the competitors will enter a strange place after the Pill Gathering begins. That strange place is the Pill Realm. Yizhong nodded and slowly explained. The Pill Realm is a space. It is rumored that an elite Do Sheng from the Pill Tower created it long ago. However, for some reason, the Pill Realm gradually became ruined. However, the Pill Realm is definitely a treasure ground that a countless number of alchemists dream of. There are tons of natural treasures and rare medicinal ingredients that one would have difficulty finding in the outside world. There. The alchemists who have the qualification to enter it will be given a list. The list will record some rare medicinal ingredients. All of you will need to rely on your own abilities to obtain all of the medicinal ingredients within the Pill Realm. Only then can you exchange them for a spatial stone at the exit area. After that, you can leave the Pill Realm and participate in the final competition. The stone platforms in the sky are there for the people who have successfully completed this final hurdle. Not everyone has the qualification to step into them. It is indeed worthy of being the Pill Gathering. Xiao Yang gently nodded and praised. After these 2 rounds of selection, it would be possible to eliminate those who had come to make up the numbers. Those who passed through the selection and remained would be the true elite of this Pill Gathering. The Pill Tower will usually not intervene with whatever happens in the Pill Realm, so as long as you are stealthy, no one will come to know about it. Although this kind of selection is extremely harsh, reality is even more merciless than the competition. If one is unable to even pass this kind of test, how can one survive on the continent and become a true alchemist guru? Yizhong slightly smiled and softly said, "Therefore, if you meet Chen Xan from the profound Shen sect in the Pill Realm, you can just attack as you like." Xiao Yang smiled. A cold glint flashed across his dark black eyes. That Chen Xan had sold information about Xiao Yang to the people from the Hall of Souls. Xiao Yang needed to resolve this brood. A loud and clear gong suddenly resounded over area while Xiao Yang and Yizhong were chatting. The gong sound spread in a mighty manner. Even the earth-shaking noise was suppressed by it. This open ground became much quieter after the gong appeared. Innumerable eyes emitted a swoosh sound as they paused on the towering stone stage on the eastern side of the square. That place would be the spot where the upper echelons of the Pill Tower would appear. Wave after wave of the sound of rushing wind suddenly appeared soon after the gong was rang. Immediately, The space above the stone stage slightly distorted. Over 10 figures slowly appeared there. Xiao Yang's eyes swept over the dozen-plus human figures. After which, they paused on the 3 human figures in the middle. Among the 3 of them, Xiao Yang had already seen one of the giant heads of the pill tower, Chen Xan. On his left and right sides were 2 existences that he could not detect any aura from. The old man on the left had dark skin. His face was tensed up, giving him a stern, no-joke feeling. His eyes were just like bolts of lightning, piercing one's soul to the point where it felt painful. The one on the right caused Xiao Yang to feel extremely surprised because she was a beautiful woman in a cheongsam. Although Xiao Yang was certain that she was not younger than Chen Xan and the other man, her appearance was similar to that of a 30-year-old woman. Her expression was indifferent, containing a faint charm that had been deposited over the years. It was the first time that Xiao Yang had seen the dark, old man and that beautiful woman. However, from the way these 2 appeared beside Chen Xan, it was obvious that these 2 should be the other 2 giant heads of the pill tower. The entire crowd had become much quieter following the appearance of these 3 people. The endless humans turned their gazes, which contained all sorts of emotion, to these 3 people. The 3 great heads of the pill tower. Forget about the Central Plains. These names were considered truly renowned across the entire Dochi continent. The 3 of them were usually existences that existed in legend. Now that they had revealed themselves, many people were in disbelief. The old me Chen Xan shall represent the pill tower here, by welcoming all the alchemists who have come here. During the time that follows, this place shall be a stage to display your skill. A white-haired Chen Xan slowly stepped forward. His warm voice clearly sounded beside everyone's ears. The open ground was completely silent. Regardless of how rebellious or fierce one could only control himself at this moment. No one dared to test these people even a little. After all, the 3 people on the stone stage were not far from peak existences on this continent. Everyone has traveled a great distance in order to hurry here. The old me shall not waste everyone's time here. Cuckoo, the pill gathering shall happen like it has in the past. It will be divided into 3 stages. Firstly, Xiao Yang quietly listened to Chen Xan's introduction of the pill gathering selection. He discovered that it was similar to what Yi Zhong had mentioned. Clearly, these rules had been the standard rules of all pill gatherings. As long as one passes these 3 selections, the last one standing will be the champion of this pill gathering. Chen Xan looked at the sea of people that had formed a ripple due to the excitement of the word champion. He involuntarily smiled and said, the champion this time around will not only be able to obtain the position of the potential successor of the pill tower's giant head, but will also be able to obtain a scroll containing a soul training method from ancient times. It will only be a matter of time for him or her to advance to 8th or 9th tier. Chen Xan's words had just sounded when the densely packed sea of people immediately let out a soul-stirring roar. The eyes of a countless number of alchemists had turned red at this moment. Tier 8. Tier 9. This legendary level appeared to be as far from them as the heavens and the earth. If they were to obtain that ancient soul training method, this gap would undoubtedly be pulled closer. This possessed a fatal allure to all alchemists. Even Xiao Yang was unable to ignore this kind of attraction. After Chen Xan uttered those words, his breathing had quietly become a lot rougher. He clearly understood just how rare and precious a soul training method of the ancient times was. It would not be overboard to describe that kind of treasure as priceless. I must make an attempt for this champion position no matter what. Xiao Yang tightly clenched his fist. A heat flashed across his dark black eyes. He was unconcerned about the status of the potential to be a giant head successor. However, this soul training method was something that he could not afford to easily ignore because he clearly understood that if he wished to become a tier 9 alchemist, the soul training method was something that he must not lack. Therefore, no matter what, he would have to put in all his effort just for this scroll of spiritual training alone. Chen Xan looked at the eyes below, which had suddenly become blood red, from the tall stage. He slightly smiled, looked at the sky before finally waving his sleeves. An invisible ripple spread, striking empty space and forming waves of long gong sounds. Time is up. The competitors who are tier 5 and above, please enter the first hurdle, the Soul Fantasy Realm. Chen Xan's finger suddenly pointed to the enormous square. The deep grey-colored space swiftly twisted, forming parts of a strange world and giving it a profound appearance. Bang! Chen Xan's voice had just sounded when numerous human figures suddenly rushed out of the endless sea of people. They acted like locusts as they rushed to the sky from all directions. After which, all of them entered the distorted space. Xiao Yang inhaled a deep breath of air as he watched the human figures entering the distorted space like a storm. He slowly stepped forward. Do your best. Xiao Yang smiled when he heard the cheer from the little fairy doctors group. After which, he suddenly stomped on the ground. His body transformed into a black figure that rushed into the deep grey distorted space without any hesitation in front of many gazes. The intense competition of the pill gathering had officially begun at this moment. Chen Xan on the tall stage nodded as he watched the human figures entering the fantasy realm like locusts in transit. Both of his hands were inserted into his sleeves as he faintly said, "The pill gathering this time around has become a little interesting. It is unexpected that even some famous old fellows have also come. The 3000 burning flame is far from what an ordinary heavenly flame can compare with. It is quite tempting to these people. Naturally, they would want to come and join in the fun." That dark-skinned, old man beside Chen Xan raised his eyebrows. His stern lightning bolt-like eyes swept over the human figures rushing into the fantasy realm hurdle as he commented. "The waves behind push away those at the front. Some of the members from the younger generation are not weaker than them. Even if they participate, it is likely that they will only end up with ashen faces." The Cheongsam-clad, pretty woman by the side smiled as she added her thoughts. Chen Xan grinned and nodded. He fondled his beard and said, "The younger generation this time has a number of outstanding people. However, the thing I am most curious about is just what extent will Xiao Yang reach." Xiao Yang? Yarrow Chen's disciple? The dark-skinned, old man was startled. His eyes immediately glanced at the pretty woman by his side. Yarrow Chen. The pretty woman was a little startled. She had been in a retreat during these years. Other than important matters like sealing the 3000 burning flames, she would usually not show herself. One could say that she was the one who kept the lowest profile among the 3 giant heads of the Pill Tower. Even some people who had just entered the Pill Tower for a short while might not even be aware of her existence. Many people thought that there had not been any woman giant heads in the history of the Pill Tower. However, only those with experience were aware that the first woman giant head of the Pill Tower had already appeared before Cao Ying. However, she was much older than Cao Ying. This mysterious, pretty woman was once considered a truly renowned person across the Doqi continent. Her name was not the least bit weaker than the other 2 giant heads. Although she had been in a retreat during these years and had not been involved in any matters, her eyes revealed an unknown glint within them when she heard of this distant name that she had difficulty forgetting. Based on what Xiao Yang said, Yarrow Chen has currently landed in the hands of the Hall of Souls. Once the pill gathering is over, we might perhaps help this old fellow if it is possible. After all, no matter what, he did our Pill Tower a great favor back then, Chen Xan slowly informed them. The face of the pretty woman slightly changed upon hearing what had happened. Her rippleless old well-like mentality had begun to fluctuate. Her face sank as she said, "Who asked that old fellow to act great back then?" He knew that the Hall of Souls had targeted him, yet he still dared to roam around. He deserves this kind of fate. You may speak in such an easy matter, but who don't know that you are the one who is most worried about that old fellow? You have quietly dispatched quite a number of people to inquire about Yarrow Chen during these years. The 2 of us know, Chen Xan sighed. Who cares if he has died? The pretty woman's eyebrows became vertical, causing her to appear mighty even without being angry. However, these words appeared to lack any backing when they landed in the ears of Chen Xan and the other person. However, the 2 of them clearly understood her stubborn character. They could only helplessly shake their heads. The many elders from the Pill Tower looked at each other after the argument of these 3. All of them wisely chose to act like they heard nothing. Let me meet this little fellow once the pill gathering is over. I have heard that the members of the Hall of Souls are also planning on capturing him. No matter what, he is also his disciple. The pretty woman calmed down after the silence of Chen Xan and their companion. Her eyes dimmed as she spoke with a complicated expression in her eyes. Chen Xan and the dark-skinned man faced each other upon hearing her words. They nodded, but did not add anything else. Xiao Yang clearly sensed the tear badge on his chest emit a strange ripple while his body was charging into the deep grey distorted space. Under this spreading ripple, a suction force erupted from the distorted space when his body touched it, sucking Xiao Yang into it. This sudden suction force caused Xiao Yang's eyes to be dazzled. The next time he regained his sight, he discovered that he was already standing in the deep grey mysterious space. This space was permeated by a thick, deep grey vapor. One could not see even half a meter in any direction with one's eyes. Moreover, a slight distortion would appear when one's sight slid by some areas. Clearly, this place should be the so-called fantasy realm hurdle. Xiao Yang's feet remained planted on the deep grey vapor. He did not charge around randomly. Instead, he continued to quietly stand there. His eyes were slightly shut as his majestic spiritual strength slowly spread out like waves of water. The deep grey vapor clearly suppressed one's soul. This was something Xiao Yang had heard Yi Zhong mention before. Hence, he did not feel too surprised. This kind of suppression also had a limit. With the current power of his soul, he was easily able to take note of the situation around despite the hindrance of the vapor. However, the distance his spiritual strength could reach had been greatly reduced. The spreading of Xiao Yang's spiritual strength allowed him to sense the ripples formed by the surrounding deep grey vapor. There should be new competitors continuously entering. This is a little similar to the energy tide in the Heavenly Eye mountain range, however, that formed naturally while this place is a maze created from using human strength to distort space. This method to trap a person is even more troublesome to deal with, Xiao Yang revealed an expression contemplation. This place should have been formed by the experts from the Pill Tower. They probably used a great amount of strength to distort space. The distorted space was massive. If one were to randomly barge in, one would definitely lose one's sense of direction or even end up being trapped here. No matter how complicated this fantasy realm hurdle was, it was after all something that was man-made. If one wished to successfully charge out of this area, one would have to clearly identify the traces of spatial distortion within it. As long as one followed the bending pathway formed by the distorted space, one would be able to successfully walk out of this fantasy realm. Of course, this might be easy to explain, but it was quite hard to do. Under this strange permeating vapor, one's sight and spiritual strength were all firmly suppressed. It would be difficult if one wished to clearly identify the complicated spatial traces in this situation, where one was essentially blind, for an ordinary alchemist. Fortunately, Xiao Yang was not in this ordinary category. With the strength of his current soul, even some Tier 7 high-grade alchemists were unable to compare with him. Although the soul was being suppressed due to the grey-colored vapor, it wasn't enough to stop one from dealing with this so-called fantasy realm hurdle. Xiao Yang faintly smiled upon hearing waves of wind being split apart a short distance away. By relying on his spiritual perception, he watched quite a number of alchemists randomly barge around and finally end up trapping themselves in some distorted space, unable to free themselves. Xiao Yang quietly spread his spiritual strength. He placed both of his hands behind him as his feet gently stepped through empty space. He leisurely followed the route that his spiritual strength had probed and slowly walked forward. This distorted space was unexpectedly vast. Adding the size of it to the many spatial folds within it, caused this place to appear like a maze. If one were absent-minded, one would end up barging into the distorted spatial folds and end up losing the qualification to continue the test. The space was vast and endless. However, Xiao Yang did not feel any anxiety because of this. His footsteps continued at a steady pace. He had witnessed many competitors charge into spatial folds because of their momentarily recklessness. Hence, he naturally understood that if he were reckless in this kind of place, the fate that would await him would definitely be the miserable one of being knocked out of the competition. Xiao Yang had also met quite a number of genuine experts along the way. The thing that caused his heart to be shocked was that most of these people had detected his spiritual perception. However, they did not come to chat with him. Instead, they all cautiously withdrew far away. Xiao Yang was not surprised that these people withdrew. However, he felt quite speechless in his heart. Most of those alchemists who participated in the pill gathering really did possess great strength. By looking at the situation, he could at the very least tell that quite a number of people were not stopped by this so-called fantasy realm hurdle. Xiao Yang's feet slowly advanced forward in the space which permeated by a deep grey vapor. If he counted the time, he should have already been in this space for an hour or so. Moreover, he could sense the spatial distortion with his spiritual perception become more complicated. At times, he would head in circles in order to avoid the spatial fold that was blocking his path. Xiao Yang's footsteps gently stepped across some deep grey fog. A thought suddenly flashed in his heart. He raised his heart and looked into the fog a short distance away. He could see waves of ripples suddenly appear at that spot. Immediately, an elderly figure slowly walked closer. Xiao Yang's heart suddenly quivered when he saw the face of that elderly figure. Teacher. Xiao Yang's eyes were startled as he looked at the smiling old man in front of him. That familiar face was Yarrow Larrow, who had been captured by the Hall of Souls. Yarrow Larrow stood a short distance from Xiao Yang and smiled. After which, he beckoned Xiao Yang with his hand. Xiao Yang's foot almost uncontrollably took a step forward as he looked at the friendly and familiar face. A sense of danger suddenly appeared in Xiao Yang's heart as he lifted his foot forward. His foot was also stilled by him. After which, he inhaled a deep breath of air, and his heart recovered its clarity. It's an illusionary figure. The deep regions of this fantasy realm hurdle are able to form illusions based on what one was thinking in one's heart. Xiao Yang frowned. He looked at that elderly figure. It was a long while later before he softly sighed. With a wave of his sleeve, a wind surged out, and scattered the elderly figure. The hidden spatial fold behind the figure was revealed. A strange, black vapor faintly permeated these spatial folds. This fantasy realm hurdle is indeed risky. Xiao Yang's eyes focused on the strange, black vapor. He understood that the appearance of the illusionary figure should be related to this thing. The caution in Xiao Yang's heart was once again raised as he shook his head. He could sense that this place was not far from the exit of the fantasy realm. His spiritual strength spread and once again found the spatial trace in front of him. He moved his feet and slowly walked into the distance. Xiao Yang saw quite a number of illusions of people he had thought of during his journey. Zun Cai Lin, Xiao Zhon, Yun Yun, etc. They were all people he had deep memories of. However, with the lesson he had learned from the last time, Xiao Yang no longer felt the least bit absent-minded because of the appearance of these illusory figures this time around. No matter how vivid those illusory figures were, he only felt a little nostalgic as he looked at them before waving his sleeves, turning around, and continuing on. Numerous illusions appeared along the way. However, they did not cause Xiao Yang to slow. Following his firm footsteps, the permeating deep grey, dense fog in front of him suddenly became fainter around half an hour later. Immediately, a 10-foot large distorted black hole appeared a short distance in front of him. This was the spatial tunnel that led to the Pill Realm. An extremely wide area was located in front of the spatial tunnel. The space around it was extremely distorted. Clearly, this was a spatial resting point that the experts from the Pill Tower had forcefully created. This kind of skill and grandness was quite outstanding. Even a faction like the Ice River Valley would be unable to show such ability or boldness. At this moment, there were quite a number of seated human figures in this empty ground. All of them possessed a strong aura. Clearly, they were all the competitors who had passed the fantasy realm hurdle earlier. These human figures were scattered around, looking at each other with cautious gazes. Only a minority were gathered together in twos or threes. However, the eyes they used to look at the others were also filled with caution. There were no friends in such a place. Only competitors were around. Xiao Yang's sudden appearance naturally stirred the attention of everyone in the empty ground. Numerous gazes that contained various emotions were shot at him. Xiao Yang's expression did not change as he sensed the gazes that vaguely contained some ill intent among the gazes of caution. His eyes slowly swept over the empty ground. He found Cao Ying's and Song Qing's figures. When Xiao Yang saw Cao Ying and Song Qing, these two had also sensed his gaze. Cao Ying was slightly startled. Immediately, the corner of her mouth revealed an enchanting smile that caused the hearts of quite a number of men to sway. Song Qing, however, slightly frowned without leaving a trace. Xiao Yang smiled at the two of them in the distance. However, he did not step forward to join them. Instead, he withdrew some distance away and found an empty spot to sit. He did not intend to get close to these two people. He did not really understand them. No one knew if he would end up being betrayed by them should he cooperate with them. Years of experience meant Xiao Yang had witnessed many such things. His heart was naturally even more cautious. Moreover, the test in the Pill Realm might be only to enter it and find some natural treasures according to one's assignment on the surface, but this second round of test was of critical importance. This first round eliminated a countless number of people. From this, one could how difficult this test was. Xiao Yang clearly understood in his heart that the greatest enemy in the second round was the competitors present here. Hence, something like cooperating with each other was less wise than acting alone if one was unable to trust the others. Song Qing sighed in relief in his heart when he saw Xiao Yang sit by himself. However, Cao Ying involuntarily bunched her eyebrows together. Xiao Yang had repeatedly not given her any face. She would start to feel a little infuriated regardless of how patient she was. Just continue putting up an act. I want to know just how you will do anything alone once you enter the Pill Realm. Cao Ying's silver teeth gently rubbed against each other like wild cats as she spoke with some anger within her heart. Xiao Yang was naturally unaware of what Cao Ying was thinking in her heart. After sitting down, he turned his head to the spatial tunnel a short distance away. There was an elder in ordinary clothes in front of the tunnel. A completely black, giant turtle shell made out of metal was under his body. That old man sat on this turtle shell. From the badge on the chest of this elder, he was clearly a member of the Pill Tower. However, hardly anyone just when such a person within the Pill Tower had appeared. Xiao Yang's eyes swept over this laser-looking elder, and his heart trembled because he was completely unable to see through the strength of this elder on the turtle. This is indeed the Pill Tower. It is really a place with many hidden individuals full of power. Xiao Yang withdrew his gaze when that man, who had been in a false sleep condition, suddenly opened his eyes. Xiao Yang could sense the man's spiritual strength, lingering in a spot between his eyebrows, shake a little when his eyes were opened. The old man glanced indifferently at Xiao Yang. After which, he scanned over the rest stop. His voice appeared a little weak as he said, "It's about time. You can enter the Pill Realm. Everyone who enters will have to come to me and receive a medicinal list task, the map of the Pill Realm, and a spatial rock. All of you must find the medicinal ingredients on the medicinal list. Only by gathering all the medicinal ingredients on the list will one be able to successfully pass this hurdle. I shall not talk more about the use of the map. The exit point of the Pill Realm is on it. You can all hurry there once you have gathered all the medicinal ingredients. As for the spatial rock, it is used to safeguard your life. If you end up in a situation where your life is at risk, you can shatter the spatial rock. After which, you will automatically be sent out of the Pill Realm. However, you will lose your qualification to continue the competition when you shatter the spatial rock. Do you understand?" The old man slowly raised his eyes near the end. Everyone slightly nodded upon hearing his explanation. Those who could arrive at this place with such speed were all extraordinary people. They clearly understood that the elder in front of them was not an ordinary old man. Due to the pill realm being in a ruined state, it is not suitable for one to stay within it for long. Therefore, all of you only have 10 days to find the medicinal ingredients you need. The identification of medicinal ingredients is a basic ability of an alchemist. I don't think that you need anyone to teach you, right? The corner of the elder's mouth was lifted as he lazily said, additionally, although the pill realm is not suitable for a human to live in for a prolonged period of time, it is like a blessed land to some magical beasts. After years of reproduction, the magical beasts in this pill realm are extremely powerful. You should all be careful if you meet them. Do not lose your life because no one will go and rescue you. You should all be mentally prepared. The pill gathering is not a game, and it is also not an ordinary competition. This place was a true battleground where one will face a bloody fight. Moreover, the one who is the last man standing after this bloody battle will be the champion of this pill gathering. One will succeed while tens of thousands will fail. The pill gathering is like this. The old man's voice had become much colder and sterner when he finished speaking. I shall cease saying any more unnecessary words. Those who are mentally prepared can come forward and take the necessary things. There is still time if you wish to withdraw. The old man on the turtle shell slowly swept his eyes around. However, not a single person withdrew. All of those present had some skill. How was it possible for them to be frightened away by his words? A middle-aged man in alchemist robes stood up without any expression soon after the elder on the turtle shell uttered those words. After which, he walked to the front of the man on the turtle shell and received the items. The middle-aged man stepped forward and walked to the slowly rotating spatial tunnel before swiftly disappearing. Some people began to step forward one after another after the middle-aged man. They received their items before entering that spatial tunnel in a quick and orderly fashion. Xiao Yang was not in a hurry to enter. Instead, he observed them with cold eyes. From what this old man on a turtle had said, the pill realm was clearly not going to be friendly ground. However, it was only normal if one thought about it. This place would eliminate those outstanding alchemists who had come from all over the Dochi continent. No one would believe him if it was not going to be dangerous. He would allow those fellows in front to on the front lines in this kind of place. After around 100 people entered the spatial tunnel, Cao Ying and Song Qing also stood up. They received the things from the old man on the turtle shell before entering the tunnel. The witch turned her head and ruthlessly glared at Xiao Yang before she entered, causing Xiao Yang to feel quite helpless. Xiao Yang finally stood up soon after Cao Ying's group entered. He was just about to move when a ripple appeared in the space behind him. A young figure slowly appeared. Xiao Yang also sensed something when this figure entered. He turned his head and a dense chill immediately flashed across his dark black eyes because this figure was not just anyone. Instead, it was the person who had formed a conflict with Xiao Yang driving the alchemist trade fair back then and subsequently sold information about Xiao Yang to old Mu Jiyu, Chen Xan. Chen Xan was still wearing white clothes. His hand was carrying a purple-colored metal fan. At a glance, he looked quite good. However, his chest had an additional tier badge at this moment. 7 purple gold stars were flickering brightly on the badge. Clearly, this fellow was a tier 7 middle-grade alchemist grandmaster. Chen Xan shifted his eyes after his entrance. He swept them over the place before pausing on Xiao Yang a short distance in front of him. He was initially a little startled before a mocking smile lifted onto his face. The purple-colored metal fan in his hand was knocked against his palm as Chen Xan walked toward the spatial tunnel. When he walked by Xiao Yang, he paused his footstep and softly laughed. Xiao Yang, right? It is unexpected that your life is so strong. Even by acting personally, that person was unable to take this little life of yours. Xiao Yang's eyes landed on the sinister-looking Chen Xan in front of him. The corner of his mouth revealed a smile that contained a deeper meaning. He softly said, young sect leader Chen Xan, it is best that you hide yourself well after entering the pill realm. Otherwise, the profound Xian sect will be without a successor. The purple-colored fan landed heavily against Chen Xian's hand. His eyes were cold as they stared at Xiao Yang. He slowly nodded a moment later and said, I shall return these words to you. Do not let me meet you in the pill realm. Otherwise, I will let you understand what is called a fate worse than death. The sinister smile on the corner of Chen Xian's mouth became even denser after his dense words sounded. He did not say anything more as he turned around and walked toward the tunnel. He received the things from the elder on the shell of a turtle and stepped into the spatial tunnel. Xiao Yang slightly smiled as he watched Chen Xian's back disappear into the spatial tunnel. However, this smile contained killing intent. He would definitely take Chen Xian's life. Hopefully you will not die by the hands of another. It will be too boring if that is the case. Xiao Yang grinned. He took 2 steps forward, took the items from the old man on the turtle shell and stored them in his storage ring. After which, he turned around and strode to the spatial tunnel. His body slowly disappeared. In desolate plains, the land was a yellowish color. Occasionally, there were some green decorations around, emitting a little life force. There would sometimes be some small magical beasts rushing around the plains. They produced a wisp of yellow smoke before disappearing into the distance. The desolate plains' silence continued for a period of time before the empty space suddenly shook. Immediately, a figure rushed out of the space. The figure which had just rushed out from the space was naturally Xiao Yang, who had entered the spatial tunnel. Xiao Yang's eyes were slightly startled when the desolate scene in front of him appeared within his eyes. A thought passed through his mind and his body remained suspended in the sky. He did not recklessly land on the ground. This is the pill realm. Xiao Yang raised his eyes and looked around him. This place was exceptionally full of energy. However, there seemed to be a violent seed within this energy. Could it be that this was due to the pill realm being damaged? Xiao Yang's hand grabbed at the empty space in front of him as he pondered the problem. Creating a realm was a godly strength that only elite Doshungs possessed. Of course, even if one managed to successfully create a realm, it would require one to constantly maintain it. Otherwise, the realm would gradually decline. Xiao Yang mused for a moment before tossing aside the thought in his heart. He clenched his hand and a goat skin appeared in it. This was the medicinal list that the old man riding the turtle shell had given him before he had entered the tunnel. He needed to gather all of the natural treasure recorded on it in order to successfully pass this hurdle. This tactic of the pill tower is not bad. They have turned all of the competitors into their laborers to search of medicinal ingredients. Xiao Yang helplessly shook his head. His eyes returned to the goatskin paper. A moment later, his eyebrows were involuntarily knit together. There were not many natural treasures written on the goatskin. Only 3 things were written on it. However, these 3 types of medicinal ingredients caused him to feel the onset of a headache. Dragon core 9 leaves mushroom, demon blood spiritual fruit pulp, ascending immortal grass. Xiao Yang muttered the names of the 3 natural treasures in his mouth. Xiao Yang's head involuntarily swelled a little. He had heard of these names because they were all quite famous. It was likely that no alchemist was unaware of how precious these things were. This pill tower is really a little too ruthless. The size of the pill realm is likely quite vast. It is easier said than done to find these 3 extremely rare treasures within it. Xiao Yang laughed bitterly. He waved his hand and took out the map of the pill realm. He flipped the map open and saw 3 red circles drawn at 3 different locations on the map. Could they be the locations where the 3 things exist? Xiao Yang was startled upon seeing the areas encircled by the red marks. He immediately fell deep into thought. Things would be easier if this was really the case. While Xiao Yang was thinking about what the circles meant, waves of distortion once again appeared in the space above these planes. Immediately, over a dozen figures rushed out of the space at the same time and landed on the ground. Bang! The feet of these people had just landed on the ground when a 1,000-foot-long python suddenly rushed out of sand dune-like surface. Its savage mouth bit toward the head of an alchemist. This sudden unexpected change caused the alchemist to be slightly shocked. However, he did not panic. With a cold cry, a powerful Do-Chi pillar shot out and violently struck the enormous python's head. That mighty force caused a bang to appear on the head of the giant python before causing it to explode. That alchemist revealed a proud expression on his face after killing the enormous python. However, before he could sigh in relief, his eyes suddenly narrowed. A ferocious laugh sounded beside his ear. "Brat, seeing that you have some skill, it is better for you to get lost." The heart of that alchemist was shocked when the ferocious laughter started. Before he could recover, a steel rod ruthlessly landed on his chest. A terrifying force sent him flying away like a cannonball. After which, he rubbed across the ground for nearly 100 meters before coming to a slow stop. That alchemist had just stabilized his body when a white glow was emitted from his palm. The space around him became distorted before absorbing him into it. From the looks of it, the spatial stone in his hand had been shattered. This sudden change had caused quite a number of people present to be shocked. Immediately, numerous gazes looked at the person who had attacked them. The one who had attacked them was a large man in alchemist robes. His face was filled with flesh. At a glance, he did not appear to be a good person. There was a 10-foot-long steel rod across his shoulders. Some fresh blood adhered to the surface of the metal rod. He has fled quick. The large man carrying a metal rod watched the spot where the alchemist had disappeared from earlier, and he involuntarily parted his mouth into a smile. After which, a fierce glint flashed across his eyes as he once again turned to the others. Seeing this fellow with strong flesh all over his face staring over, some of the other competitors' expressions changed. A caution rose within their hearts. Some of them even took out their weapons. In this place, they clearly understood that all the other participants were their competitors. They would gain an additional chance if they could finish even one of them off. That large man lifted his mouth in disdain when he saw them pull out their weapons. The metal rod containing traces of blood in his hand was violently waved. After which, he sent the enormous python flying. When that enormous python was sent away, a depression immediately appeared under the sand dunes. A deep yellow rhizome, the size of a child's head, appeared in the depression in front of everyone's eyes. Ground Rehania glutinosa? Surprise flashed across Xiao Yang's eyes when he saw the deep yellow rhizome deep underground. This ground Rehania glutinosa was a kind of rare medicinal ingredient that was formed by gathering the strength of the land. If one's energy started a violent uprising when one was training, this ground Rehania glutinosa as well as some additional medicinal ingredients could be refined into a pill with the ability to suppress the uprising. Xiao Yang's eyes paused on the deep hole as surprise flashed through them. He appeared to be contemplating the ingredient. 100-year-old ground Rehania glutinosa was only the size of a fist. Moreover, it was an extremely rare existence. It was unexpected that the ground Rehania glutinosa within this pill realm had grown to such an extent. It was really surprising. This thing had likely aged for 1,000 years. If this thing was brought to the outside world, it would likely attract many eyes. This person might appear rash, but he is extremely observant. He could tell that this place possessed the ground Rehania glutinosa likely because he had recognized that ground yellow python. Xiao Yang glanced at the enormous python. Any area where the ground yellow python appeared would have the ground Rehania glutinosa. However, this ground yellow python was not much different from an ordinary python. If one was inexperienced, one would likely find it difficult to identify it. A wild joy flashed across the eyes of the large man when he saw the size of that ground Rehania glutinosa. He grabbed it and pulled it out. After which, he parted his mouth into a smile. His gaze swept over the people with heated eyes, and his face sank. He coldly cried out, "Get lost if you do not wish to die." The remaining dozen-plus alchemists' expressions changed when they heard his cold cry. However, after witnessing the fierceness of the large man earlier, they did not dare to say anything more. The ruthlessness of this person's attack was deeply imprinted in their minds. After hesitating for a moment, the remaining alchemists finally chose to withdraw. Although the ground Rehania glutinosa was rare, it would not be worthwhile to lose their right to compete because of it. The disdain on the face of the large man became even denser as he watched these people withdraw as they were told. Among these people, there were at least 2 who were only a little weaker than his strength at the peak of the Do Huang class. However, they did not possess a fierceness or boldness like him. Therefore, these cowardly mice could only leave empty-handed. The world was always a place where the strong ate the weak. If one did not possess any courage, how would one be able to succeed and stand above others? A group of trash. The large man curled his mouth. After which, a bloodthirsty expression flashed across the face of the large man. He was just about to store the ground Rehania glutinosa into his storage ring when a suction force suddenly appeared and snatched the ground Rehania glutinosa away. "Damn it, who dares to touch the things that belong to this father of yours?" A tyrannical expression immediately flashed across the face of the large man when the ground Rehania glutinosa left his hand. He suddenly raised his head, only to see a young figure suspended in the air without support. "Get lost." Xiao Yang in the sky indifferently glanced at the large man. He was not the least bit courteous. The tactics of this person allowed Xiao Yang to understand that he was not a good person. One must use vicious tactics when dealing with an evil person. Hence, Xiao Yang's words left no room for discussion. The expression of the large man changed when he saw that Xiao Yang was able to remain in the air without any support. He clearly understood just what kind of being was able to stay afloat in the air. This meant that this young fellow was at the very least an elite dozong. An expert of this level was not someone the large man could afford to offend. He grit his teeth while feeling a great unwillingness within his heart. However, this large man was not someone who did not recognize the situation. He was able to snatch things from others and others would naturally be able to snatch his things. If one were act kindly in this pill realm, it was likely that one would be defrauded to the point where one would not even be left with one's clothes. The large man furiously stared at Xiao Yang, but did not dare to say much. His eyes paused on the 1,000-year-old ground Rehania glutinosa in Xiao Yang's hands. He carried a stomach full of anger as he transformed into a blurry shadow, rushing to the distant mountain range. Xiao Yang's face did not reveal any ripple as he watched the large man go. He randomly put this 1,000-year-old ground Rehania glutinosa in his storage ring after the man had disappeared into the distance. His body slowly landed in the deep hole in the ground. His eyes contained some anticipation as he looked at the bottom of the deep pit. Although the 1,000-year-old ground Rehania glutinosa was precious, it was not great enough to get Xiao Yang to pay too much attention to it. The thing that truly interested him was something that lay even deeper underground. This video will end here. Thank you for watching.